David Butler is a literature teacher and the head of the school chess club. Not long ago, he had a son, and the family faced financial difficulties. Rachel, David's wife, would not mind going back to work, but David hopes to get a position as a professor at a college, where he will be paid significantly more. All he has to do is write an application. One day before class, David met Lucas Ward, a student who transferred from another school. Lucas had been skipping classes a lot this school year and ended up turning in a stack of papers that he did not actually have to submit. The new student gave David an apple, thus symbolizing their potential fruitful collaboration. Lucas introduced himself to the class, but his speech was interrupted by a bully named Chris, who called the new student a loser. Lucas sat down next to Becca, the best student in the class. His knowledge of the subject amazed not only the teacher, but also his neighbor. He is also a good chess player. During a game with David, Lucas revealed that his father is a famous lawyer and his mother died long ago. As it turned out, Lucas taught himself to play chess and had just checkmated David. The teacher was delighted with the new student and even hoped to become his mentor. Meanwhile, Chris was whispering with a classmate everywhere, which irritated Lucas so much that he could not concentrate on his notebook. After the bell rang, Lucas blocked Chris's exit and asked him to refrain from talking during class. Chris, perplexed, asked if Lucas was making him shut up. Lucas, without hesitation, declared that next time he would stab him in the throat with a pen. This scared the athlete, and at the end of the lesson, all the students handed in an essay. Lucas threw the work, several hundred pages long, on the table. David couldn't help but laugh. This is a whole dissertation. In the chess club, Lucas defeated the local champion, but David decided to leave Alex as the captain of the school team because Lucas was only a newcomer and would be second on the team. The young genius could hardly contain his anger. In chemistry class, Lucas sat next to Alex. The teacher warned about the need for caution when working with alkali metals. Taking advantage of the moment, Lucas, when Alex was examining potassium under a microscope, dropped a little water on it. This led to a violent reaction and an explosion. Thus, Lucas got rid of a competitor. Alex will not be able to return to school until the end of the semester. Lucas hoped that Alex would recover, although he remembered that Beethoven composed his best works after becoming deaf. After the incident, the chemistry teacher was fired, and David suspected that something was fishy. In the evening, he began checking the talented student's enormous work. The next day, David handed out the work with the grades. Lucas was surprised to see a 4+ instead of a 5. He asked David what was going on and learned that the teacher disagreed with his opinion of Iago from Othello, considering him a villain. Lucas even associated himself with this insidious manipulator and concluded that David simply did not understand his interpretation. David insisted on his grade, explaining that a 4+ was almost an 5. Lucas, unable to restrain himself, began to yell and demand an A. However, David was not going to correct anything. Lucas began to follow the teacher and found out where and with whom he lived. In the morning, David discovered that his car tire was flat and he had to ride his bike to work, which made him late. He should not have told the class about his application to be a college professor. The troubles continued. The markers on the board refused to write, and his lunch disappeared from the refrigerator, forcing him to eat in the school cafeteria. Despite this, he still sent in his college application. Lucas noticed that his neighbor Becca liked David and lied to her that David was not doing well with his wife. According to him, the feelings between them are mutual. Lucas encouraged Becca to approach David and start flirting with him. The poor teacher was sweating from embarrassment, but he was saved by a phone call. The college deacon informed David that his application was rejected. She read out several sentences from the essay where David was presented in an unfavorable light. David was stunned because he did not write it. Although the envelope was signed with his name, he began to suspect that this was the work of Lucas. The next day, David directly asked Lucas about it. The student answered with a joke, but noted that as long as his grades were okay, then David would be fine in life. If the teacher did not give him A's, he could lose everything. David decided to find out from the principal if Lucas had any problems at his previous school, since something was clearly wrong with him. The principal thought that David was more likely to have problems. However, David wanted to meet Lucas's father. Mr. Ward drinks a lot and thinks his son is a great guy. He demanded that David prove his words and advised him to get out of the house, otherwise the lawyer would accuse him of slander. Meanwhile, Lucas called Rachel and said that her husband was not at school. This aroused Rachel's suspicions because David told her that he was at classes and did not want to explain where he was going. David told Rachel that he was being terrorized by one student, but she did not take his words seriously. Lucas returned home and immediately noticed that someone was in the house. He realized that his father was afraid of him. David met with the history teacher from Lucas's previous school. He said that Lucas praised the Nazis in his work, admitting that Adolf's methods were a little wrong. The teacher gave him a B, after which Lucas began to blackmail him, and the historian had to change the grade to an A. From then on, he was afraid to teach. David decided to declare war on Lucas and gave him a final grade of F. Lucas became furious and destroyed his room. David was uneasy about starting the next lesson, and he breathed a sigh of relief when he found out that Lucas had not come. However, Lucas was simply plotting revenge. In the evening, when only David and Becca were left in the chess club, the girl suddenly began to undress and grab the teacher by the crotch. David yelled at her and demanded that she leave. Lucas recorded all of this on a hidden camera, hoping to get dirt on his enemy. However, David, acting differently than Lucas expected, rejected Becca. Becca called Lucas and complained that David rejected her. Lucas said that Becca simply wasn't trying hard enough and should express her feelings in a letter. He dictated what she should write. The letter included lines about Becca being fed up with her life and apologizing for what she had done. "Thank you, Lucas. You're such a good friend," she added. That same evening, David was called to school. The detective reported that Becca had jumped off the roof, and apparently their affair was the cause. At the same time, a note was found next to her. David immediately realized that Lucas had killed the poor girl, all because of a grade. However, the headmistress failed to support him. A sweater from a dead student was found in the classroom, and until the situation is clarified, David will be suspended from work. Rumors about his affair with the student reached Rachel. She does not want to see her husband anymore. When it was time to interrogate Lucas, he played the role of the grieving man perfectly. According to him, Becca had long been in love with the teacher and David hated him. Lucas claimed that David gave him a bad grade out of jealousy. David began to follow Lucas. He waited until he left the house and, pushing his father away, burst into his room. The man did not interfere with David, who was rummaging through his son's things. He remembered how Lucas had been filming himself since childhood, rehearsing different emotions, as if practicing becoming a person. David found a camera that recorded their conversation with Becca. This girl died, and the weak-willed father of the young monster is partly to blame for her death. Meanwhile, Lucas recited a poem dedicated to his dead friend in French class. He was invited into the principal's office, where he was shown a recording that showed him installing a hidden camera to get dirt. He was lying. The detective would reopen the case of Becky's murder. David, meanwhile, received a restraining order. Lucas could no longer come near him, and Lucas himself was expelled from school. Lucas froze for a second, but then left the office. On the street, the English teacher caught up with him. "If you come near me or my family again, I will kill you," David said. At home, Lucas's father watched childhood videos of his sociopathic son, surrounded by empty pill bottles. He died in front of Lucas. Things were back on track for David and Rachel, and he was able to prove his innocence to his wife. David went to take a shower, and Rachel went into the kitchen for a minute. When she returned, she found Lucas next to their child. "You have a perfect family," the intruder remarked. When David came out of the shower, he saw his wife lying on the floor. She had been strangled, and instead of their son, there was a chess piece on the diaper. David realized that the killer was waiting for him at the chess club, and so it was. Lucas raised his hand over the baby, ready to hit him at any second. He again reproached David for not giving him the grade he deserved. David, having waited for the right moment, threw an object that was at hand at Lucas and pounced on him. He hit the boy with the apple he had given him and began to strangle him. David was not going to loosen his grip, but the detective pointed a gun at him. Besides, he could not leave his son alone. The man unclenched his fingers and picked up the baby. David took one last look at the psychopath and went home. I also recommend watching other videos on my channel. Good luck!